Hello and welcome to the Michael Mama Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. It looks like we got nice weather. We had some beautiful spring weather, and then we had a few days of a cold snap, but it's back to normal now. And so I'm enjoying some beautiful spring weather. Let me find the podcast notes here. Where'd they go? There we go. All right. Well, before we dive into the meat of the thing, I was watching a series. It's a 9-episode series on Netflix. It's about, what was it called? Turning Point. It's about, the Cold War and the bomb and all that. And I was really impressed with it. If anybody watches it and thinks any part of it is inaccurate, I'd love to hear from you. But I thought it was really good. It went into the whole history of Russia and, the modern history, basically starting with, I guess, Stalin and Lenin and that. And then it talked about the Berlin Wall and the bomb, the development of the bomb and all. But it was very well done, I thought. And I was even going to recommend it to everybody listening. But then what happened? And it kind of surprised me because they were very academic about it, very informative about it, and seemed very balanced about it and everything. But then in the last episode, after they really built up your faith in them, and it's almost like, geez, everything these people are saying is fabulous. Then they got to the subject of Trump. And I'm not, if you're a fan of Trump or if you can't stand Trump, either way, I mean, I think it's been clearly recognized that that whole Russia collusion thing that they were putting on Trump, I mean, they spent millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars researching it to try to pin it on him. And it just wasn't there. But in this 9th episode of this series, they really went heavy into how Trump was in collusion with Russia. And I thought, oh my God, and then I just noticed there's also, there's a TV series, 60 Minutes. It's been around for, decades, I think. And this one guy, I don't know all their names. I don't really watch it that much, but he was interviewing a woman and he got really, like, he took off his eyeglasses and he was kind of nibbling on the, edge of the frame in a very cerebral kind of pedagogical manner, like he was all knowing and almost sort of a condescending tone. And he was questioning her in a way that I didn't care for it. It was like he knew all the answers and whatever she said, if she didn't agree with him, which she didn't, then she was just wrong, And it bothered me, So I think we have to watch with respect to the news and the press that, they take on a tone like that and then they kind of slip in their perspective. And I don't care if it's left or right or whatever, that's not the point. The point is that you just really have to be attentive, At any rate, other than that, I thought it was a great series. I learned a lot, couple other things. Oh, there's a mantra that's supposed to help people with viruses. And back when the COVID thing was in full blossom, we made it available and a lot of people felt like it really helped. So at any rate, in the notes to this podcast at michaelmamas.net, there's a link to to that mantra if you want to listen to it. Just thought I'd make it available. Also, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the 3 aspects of Mother Divine, Parvati, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. Because there's a nice, I think, analogy that gives some insight into the uniqueness of each one of them. And the idea, and this kind of goes back to my talks about the Brahma Sutras in a way, because, you have Shiva value, which is like that consciousness, that witness, that no opinion, no perspective, just pure awareness, pure consciousness as the backdrop upon which all of this field of Maya, this field of illusion, the relative world is etched. And of course, that principle of manifesting is the domain of Mother Divine. She's the one that births, the universe. And so there are three aspects to that. One is Parvati, which is kind of like, well, they use the analogy. It's a nice analogy, I think, of if it's a house, it's the consciousness within the house that makes it a home. That's Shiva awareness, the occupant, and the awareness of the occupant, so to speak. Whereas Parvati is kind of like the structure, the walls, the floor, the ceilings, everything that makes it a house. And the Lakshmi value, on the other hand, I think the most beautiful analogy of Lakshmi I've ever heard is like Lakshmi is like the value of like on a beautiful spring day when all the plants are vibrant and alive and the flowers are blossoming and everything is just exquisite and beautiful. That's the value of Lakshmi. And using in the analogy of the house, then Lakshmi would be like, I guess she'd be like the cook in the kitchen who prepares everything just marvelously, and it's all just abundant and beautiful, And then there's, so that's Lakshmi. And then the last is Saraswati. Saraswati, is intellect and music, that kind of a thing. But she also like gives a direction, a purpose, a direction to the life of the people in the home, So I just thought that was a nice analogy and you might appreciate it. So I just thought I'd share it. Another thing that I've noticed is, and I think we're all noticing this if we pay any attention to the news at all, but the world is like waking up, It's like there are all these different ideas and ideologies and notions and things that are coming along. And it's sort of sorting itself out, And I do believe that's a sign of things to come. That process is going to continue. And we're entering an era when, like the golden age that we've talked about. But the signs are already there. But there's, of course, a friction because there's the old and then there's the new, the golden age emerging. And as it breaks through the Rakshasa, the kind of more negative worldview, it's a birthing process, But we're seeing it, The world is waking up. So one thing I wanted to talk about today really is just the idea of animals and animals in the Veda. And I don't know, one kind of a fun little riddle, I think, is, are animals in the Veda or is the Veda in animals? And kind of, well, what the heck does that mean? Well, the idea is that everything is birthed out of the Veda. It's all out of Chaitanya, the absolute. And so everything, you, me, this computer, the camera, everything has its roots, its essence, what it is in the absolute. And, there are these, you'll see these things, I don't know, makes me think of old television programs or movies or whatever. And they had like the natives in the jungle or the natives in some island in the Pacific, and they were worshiping some idols, some animals, and how weird that was. And it really did come across as weird. But then within the Vedic tradition, of course, there's Hanuman, Ganesh, Nandi, all these different, animal values. And I think it's common for people then to kind of associate that sort of a thing with these kind of, natives in the jungle or in these remote islands in the Pacific, And so I wanted to convey a deeper understanding than what might be common as to what that's about, And the idea is that within the absolute, okay, and we've talked about the pure, flat, absolute, unbounded consciousness, pure isness, which is an interesting concept. Consciousness equals isness. But within that consciousness interacts with itself in a very geometric, a very structured way. Consciousness becomes conscious of itself, perceives it as other, and there's two things there. And then that whole dynamic with the process of knowing, and it keeps interacting. It's a self-interacting dynamic that creates a very precise structure. And so I compare it sometimes to like a kaleidoscope, or any sort of a complex geometric design where you can see different patterns. You can see different structures contained within that greater structure. And that greater structure is, the Sri Yantra, and again, yantra means machine. It's a mechanic. And that Sri Yantra then is a geometric structure that holds everything. That is the foundation, you could say, of everything. And within that structure, then there are a number of different values, and they're in the absolute, and and they emerge into the relative. And so as species evolve, different species embody different values, different structures within that greater structure to varying degrees. And so that's where birds come from. That's where elephants come from. That's where all the different animals, monkeys, bulls, the whole thing. And so those are, they're values of the absolute. They're values, they're qualities of divinity, they're qualities of God. And each of them of those qualities carries with it different, as you relate to those, as you interface with those, it brings forth different aspects of those qualities that can bring those values into your life. Like the strength of Hanuman, the steadfast of Nandi, the remover of obstacles of the Ganesh value, the elephant-headed, idea. And so those are very, very real principles that are structured right in the absolute. And so they're not weird, if once you understand them. But boy, I can certainly understand people that if they had no idea of that and they walk into a Vedic temple sometime and see all that, it's like, oh man, this is weird. But it's really because it's not understood. I like to like with Ganesh, with the elephant head, there's the idea that if you do a sagittal section of the brain, picture, you can kind of see the shape of an elephant head in there. It's similar, or a leaf, the structure, the shape of a leaf. So those are principles that rise up in all of nature, and so they're divine, and I think it's good. I think it's important to understand that, Now, there are two things there, aren't there? There's the structured quality, but then there's the personified correlate. You can see it as a structure within the geometric structure of the absolute, or you can also see it, two sides of the same coin, as the personified quality. And really one place, and I mean, modern physics is great. Physics is great. I was a physics and math major. That's my background and I love it. But where it kind of fell short was it spoke a language, of mathematics and that really didn't interface well with the personified component. And just like be it with God or be it with people, if you can't really relate to another human being well by seeing them as a bunch of electrons, protons, a structured mechanic. It's the personified aspect that is the most effective interface, and the most effective, then, if you will, technology to enliven your relationship, in the case of divinity, with those particular values of divinity. And in the Veda, that's taken to a highly sophisticated level, where the pujas and the havans and all that, these ceremonies, they're technologies that embrace not only the personified, but also the structured component of divinity and different aspects of divinity in ways that really enliven and bring forth those values into our lives. And I think it's important to know that, and really, Scotty, if you're there, I think that's really what I wanted to say in this podcast. You got anything you wanted to add or ask or anything, Scotty, before we close?
Well, that kind of brings up another aspect if you're talking about like Christianity and the difference between polytheism and monotheism, where they're kind of talking about the expressions of God, whereas like from the monotheistic, where it's just there's 1,000 faces of God. There, the language. Maybe you could talk about that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's a common thing if you talk to a Hindu about, well, Hinduism is polytheistic. They're very proud to respond by saying, no, there's only one God. That's come up in a number of conversations I've had. And so they understand that, yes, those are all different aspects of the one. And I saw this thing, I almost put it in my notes of the podcast, but I took it out. But there was a woman, where did I see this? It might have been on YouTube. I can't remember where I saw it. But there was a woman, and she was saying that you can be the best good deed doer in the world. You can donate tons of money to good causes. You can be a wonderful human being. But she said you're not going to go to heaven unless you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and the only way. And now I found that very interesting, because it's all a matter, in my mind, of how narrow or how expanded your definitions are. For example, the definition of Jesus Christ, we don't sell him short. He encompasses the totality of existence, and he emerges in life with all these different, as you say, Scotty, faces. So if that's how she meant it, then I would agree with her, but I don't believe that's how she meant it, And also the idea of accept, if you accept Jesus, well, what does accept mean? If accept means, okay, I get that notion, and yeah, I believe it in my heart, and that's what I believe, that's one form of acceptance. It's another form of acceptance where you cultivate the physiology, cultivate the nervous system, so that you are embodying the full value of that totality within your own function. That's a much deeper meaning of the word accept. And if that's what she meant, which I don't think it is, but if it is, then I would agree with her there. And let's see, what was there was another, so accepting, in heaven. Well, what does she mean by heaven? It probably means, stuff I've talked about in previous podcasts, that there's that astral component, which is beautiful, but it's still in the relative, But really what it's about is when that full value of the transcendental reality, that which lies beyond relativity, the absolute, all structured in the Brahmanas, which is all within the absolute, and emerges out through the mantras, through the Veda, as the fundamental building blocks in relative existence, But if she meant the absolute, then she's talking about, human evolution and enlightenment. So, and there's so many things like that, that, it's just how deep is the understanding of a lot of these different notions and concepts, be it in Christianity or Hinduism or any religion, It's all a matter of the depth of understanding of them. And if you go to the deepest understanding of any religion, it's all the same thing. And I use the word Veda in that way. Veda is defined in that way. So Veda lies far beyond, a paradigm or a worldview or a religion in that sense, All right. I think that's it for today, Scotty.
Yep, that sounds like it.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll talk again next week.